Welcome to Haven's Handiworks. It's hot under there. Hide! It's hot under there. Ugh, ketchup. Okay, so this mess is all because of a joke between me and my husband. At least it started out that way. A friend of mine posted a parade of dolls for a Halloween decoration. And my husband asked, what would I do with all of the leftover creepy dolls? And the first thing that came to mind was creepy doll planters, which he was not as enthusiastic about. But I posted the conversation online, and my mother was all for her very own creepy doll planter. So we're going to be tearing apart this doll and transforming it. Originally, I wanted to use like an old thrift store find, but for some reason there were absolutely no thrift store dolls at any of the thrift stores I went to. So finally I was just like, screw it. We'll use a Walmart doll. And so first we got to decapitate. And I guess you would probably like a top-down view of that.
I'm going to try something different this time. I get really absorbed in anything involving paint, so there wasn't much audio. Instead, you get a voiceover anytime I start a new step. And anytime it becomes repetitive, I'll speed it along with a little music. To remove the doll head, I use a seam ripper. The head is attached with a zip tie threaded into the seam. It's easier to remove the zip tie if the head is detached from the body, so I'm going to do that first. Once the head is detached from the body, you'll need to strip the seam encasing the zip tie and remove the excess fabric. Then cut off the zip tie. Before now, I'd never actually looked at the inside of a doll head. It was at this point that I discovered that the eyes were actually encased in a plastic membrane, the same plastic as the doll head. To remove the eyes, I needed to open up the neck cavity. I also needed to do this so I could put more into the planter itself. Adding radial cuts every inch or so made this easier. I tried several tools to remove the inner eye socket, but what I found worked best was the garden shears. Once the plastic was cut, I could use a pair of needle nose pliers to pop the eye out. If you've ever wondered what the inside of a doll eye looks like, this is it. I'll probably save this for another project later on. The other eye gave me a little more trouble, but in the end I got it out just the same. The housing on this eye broke, so you get to see what the inside of it looks like. For the eyes, I'm using red glass pebbles, and you want to press them round side into the eye socket from the back of the eye. Here I'm checking to make sure the pebble fits snugly into both eye sockets. Before this will be ready to glue the eyes in, I'll need to send this out to paint. But before I paint it, I need to add holes for the hooks so I can hang it. This will require 4 holes. To add the holes, I'm going to use a leather hole punch, punching the holes into the groove of the neck where the zip tie was. The hole on the front of the neck is the most difficult because of the chin. Time for spray paint. Now that the head is dry, it's time to glue in the eyes. To glue the eyes, I'm using Gorilla brand 5-minute epoxy. You have to work kind of quick or it will set up on you before you're done. Make sure you mix the epoxy well or it won't set up properly. Press the pebbles into the eye sockets and hold them there. While you're holding them there with your fingers, use the applicator and spread the epoxy along the perimeter of the eye, making sure to get underneath the eye socket as well as on top. If you spill a little, don't worry. It's easy enough to wipe off with your glove. Hold the pebbles in place for a few minutes to set up. Then place the doll head face down while the epoxy hardens the rest of the way. On my palette, I'm pouring a tiny bit of Golden Paint Flow Acrylic in Carbon Black. This stuff goes a long way. And since I was tearing apart the doll anyways, I decided to make this a set and use the limbs to make a propagation station. First, I needed to age the pieces, and to do that, it took me a few tries to get the look I wanted. In the end, I settled for a dry brush technique using a fluffy and old nylon brush with only the barest of paint. Anytime I add too much, I use the makeup sponge to wipe off the excess. Gradually build up the paint until you reach your desired look, taking care to keep it darkest at the lowest points. Repeat until all the limbs are done. Using a fine point liner and more carbon black paint, I'm creating the illusion of chips and cracks in the doll. You want the lines to look organic, but also sharp, like cracks in porcelain. Repeat this on all the arms and legs, adding a few to each limb. For the doll head, I wanted to give him some wispy black hair. I tried a few brushes, but in the end, I liked my dagger liner best for this. The fan brush was just a little too messy. Using the liner brush on a wide angle, sweep little wisps all around the perimeter of the scalp. Using the makeup sponge and some more carbon black, I try to darken the scalp, but I don't like how it turned out, so I switch over to an old nylon makeup brush. The paint applies really thin at first, but after a few layers, it starts to darken up to the desired blackness. Work the brush around the scalp a little at a time, making sure not to go outside the perimeter of the scalp. Repeat until you achieve the look you're looking for. Next, I drop a drop of the carbon black directly into the mouth, and then I use a small brush to spread it around inside, turning the inside of the mouth completely black. Don't forget the roof of the mouth. I also do the same for the insides of the ears. Using the same dry brush technique I used on the arms and feet, I darken the eye sockets and the low points in the face. And then I add a little eyeliner to the lid of one of the eyes. You'll get to see why a little later. On the other eye, I use my liner brush and more carbon black to add cracks to the eye, radiating outward. I went heavy on the cracks on this side to help balance out what I'm going to do to the other eye later. Then I added cracks to the corners of the mouth on both sides, making sure they radiate outward. I also add a small cluster of cracks on one of the cheeks. To create the color of coagulated blood, I use 2 shades of red, rose red, and crimson, and just a touch of Prussian blue. Using the applicator I mixed the blood red paint with, I paint the lips red. Be careful not to overpaint them.
the remaining red paint and the help of my makeup sponge, I give my doll's feet bloody soles, almost like my nightmarish doll walked in blood. I plan on suspending both the head and the limbs with the help of these gnarly extra large hooks by Berkeley Fusion. You can find them in the fishing aisle in most Walmarts. But before I can use them, they need to be blunted so they don't injure anyone during plant maintenance. Blunting them turned out to be relatively easy with the help of some wire nips. See? No more sharp points. Next, I'm going to embellish the lined eye with some nylon fabric spiderweb false lashes I found at Spirits. These will work great for this project because they won't get damaged by any water they may come in contact with, and the adhesive they use to stick them to their packaging will help hold them temporarily until the epoxy sets. Once you get the lashes how you want them, the next step is epoxy. Mix up another small batch and with the help of an applicator, carefully apply the epoxy to the lash line, making sure to completely encase the first strip of web closest to the eye. This will ensure that the lashes don't accidentally become detached with use. While the epoxy dries, I set the head aside and it's time to gore up some hooks to match the rest of the project's aesthetic. This is the same old blood paint combination as before: rosy red, crimson, and just a touch of Prussian blue. Give it a good mix with the applicator. I use a combination of the applicator to apply globs and my finger to apply smears all over the hooks. Repeat until you have them all covered. But don't cover the hooks completely. You want this to look like it's smeared on there, not like they're painted red. In total, you'll need 8 hooks. While the hooks dry, I'm going to make the anchor end of the hangers. For this, I need a carabiner. This one is rated at 20 pounds, which is way more than this will ever hold, and some hemp rope. Both are from Lowe's. Measure out roughly how far you want the head to hang from the ceiling, and double it, plus a few inches. Then cut another piece of cord the same length. Match the strings and find the middle. Then attach the cord to the carabiner using a lark's head knot. I'll add an image of a lark's head knot to the upper right corner of the screen that I got from canned stock photo. Measure out where you want the hook to attach and tie a knot in each string, making sure each one matches up to the others. Even though I'm adding paint to the carabiner now, I recommend waiting until after you add the hooks to paint them. That way you don't have to wait for them to dry to move on to the next step. It was at this point that I decided to do a little macrame thingy to hang the legs and arms. You could just braid it or leave them loose, it doesn't matter. I just like the way the macrame looked. After you're done braiding your cord, attaching your hooks, and the paint has dried, it's super easy to attach the limbs. And if you kept the barb on the hook, they won't come unhooked very easily. You should have already have done this by now, but I am going to measure out where I want my hooks, tie my knots, and attach my hooks. Now that they've dried. Now that my hooks are attached, I'm going to hook the hooks into the doll head, hooking the hooks inward from the outside to the inside of the neck. It was at this point that I went ahead and painted the hooks for the propagation station as well. I had a lot of fun making this project, and I hope you enjoyed following along.
You look how I feel.